All right, it is 12:30, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Sarah Sims, and I'm the Assistant Director of Professional Development here at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. Thank you all for joining us for today's Open Classroom program. Open Classroom is the Brown School's virtual and free professional development series. As folks are getting settled, I just want to start with a couple of housekeeping items before officially introducing the program and our speaker for today. So first, we are using a Zoom webinar format, which just means that we can't see or hear you, but you are able to use the chat. So we would love for you to do that throughout today's presentation. And specifically, we'll leave about 10 minutes give or take at the end for some Q&A. And so you can drop your questions into the chat at any time that you have them, as well as any comments that you might have. Also, we are recording today's session and we post all of our programs on our Open Classroom webpage. So you can go back and watch later or share with a colleague. I'm going to be dropping links to that in the chat in just a moment. So today's Open Classroom is a part of our Black History Month series. And I would like to just begin by acknowledging and thanking our entire Black History Month Planning Committee, and especially our two co-chairs, Amber Brown and Cynthia Williams. And Amber Brown is here with me today. She's the Assistant Director of Career Development here at WashU, and she's going to be facilitating the Q&A portion at the end of the program today. So now, actually turning to the program and the speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. St. Louis native, KVtheWriter, is a dynamic rapper and songwriter whose genre-blurring sound gained local attention with her 2019 debut EP and sold-out show, Love Sucks. Her rapid rise continued with the release of the Ratchet tape just 3 months later, featuring hard-hitting bars and distinctive style. In 2019, she claimed the Best Hip Hop Artist Female Award at the St. Louis Music Festival Awards. KV's impact extends beyond music. She is an Audio Mac playlist curator, event organizer, and 2022 recipient of the Riverfront Times Changemaker Award. Passionate about restorative justice, KV contributes to the cause of prison abolition through her work at Freedom Community Center. And we here at the Brown School are happy to add to KV's list of accolades, naming her one of our 2024 Black History Month champions. KVtheWriter is going to present today. Her presentation is called The Last Word, Exploring Identity, Resistance, and Narrative Power in Art. Please join me in welcoming KVtheWriter.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Sarah. I really appreciate it. My name is Kayla Thompson, also known as KVtheWriter. I'm an artist. I have a published book called Of Magic and Madness. It was first place winner at Writer's Digest Self-Published Book Awards in 2018, I believe. I'm an educator. I used to teach. I have a teacher certificate, and I used to teach in St. Louis Public School District. I'm an activist. I do a lot of work around restorative justice and a lot of work around prison action. And I'm also a martial artist. So around 8 or 9 months ago, I started mixed martial arts, and I'm currently an orange belt. Super excited about that. I do a whole lot of other things, but we're going to get into that in a little later. Now I want to get my chat open. Let's see. All right. So, Christina from School Research Coordinator. Welcome. All right, we got St. Louis in the building. St. Louis. Welcome, or advocate for the Black disability community. Okay, we got some from Oakland, psychology on the chat now.
Sorry, KV, your audio is going in and out for a moment. It's just FYI.
Okay. Let me see. Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to switch to the phone audio. I think something's up with my audio, if that's all right.
No problem. We definitely want to be able to hear you.
Right, I need that.
While KV is doing that, I just want to draw everyone's attention. I did drop a few things in the chat. Our link to our Black History Month page, our Wall of Champions, where you can find our recorded open classroom programs, as well as KV's website, where you can learn more about her music, and her work.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone. Sorry about the audio difficulties. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So, who are we really? How do you define yourself beyond your job or roles in your life? How often do we meet people and we ask them, like, what do you do? We ask them, where are you from? If you're from St. Louis, you ask them, what high school did you go to? But how much of that really defines who we are as a person? And so I want us to think about this as we move forward in this presentation. Who am I really? Because words really define us. Authentic, empathetic, curious, resilient, compassionate. These are the types of things that I want us to think about as we move forward in this presentation, as we talk about and we think about our identity and how we can use that to really create change in our community. So I define myself, or I think of myself as someone that's super empathetic, resilient, creative, and reflective. Moments also define us. So as we move through this, I want you to think about some pivotal moments and experiences that significantly shaped who you are today. Think about those moments, put them in the back of your head, because we're going to circle back to those. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a series of life-changing moments in my life that led me to activism, led me to creativity, and led me to art. Before we get started, trigger warning, the story will contain references to gun violence, grief, loss, and some trauma. So, my name is Kayla Thompson. I was named by my mother. I have two brothers, an older brother and a little brother named Tyrell and Tyler. My dad's name is Tyrone, and I was also supposed to be a Ty, but my mom jumped in and said, no, I am naming my daughter. You are not going to name all of these kids Tyrone or Ty something. I was born and raised in St. Louis. I grew up in North County. I went to Hazelwood School District. I love to fish and hang out with my family. I loved horseback riding. The first time I went horseback riding was at a picnic, a barbecue. I was maybe 9 years old, and the guy that let me ride the horse let me just gallop around, and I just fell in love with that. Growing up, I loved to make songs with my brothers and my friends, and we would always perform them with our family. And I loved battle rapping with my friends. In high school, I had a series of events where I would upload videos on Facebook of me battle rapping some of my friends. So that's who I am. I was very close to my family, especially my dad. He was the superhero in our neighborhood. He was the father to all the kids in the neighborhood. My favorite pastime was doing karaoke with him, as you can see here. We were probably singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. That was our favorite thing to do. My dad was an activist himself. He participated a lot in young people's lives. He had some organizations that where he helped young men with like jobs or interviewing skills. He was a mentor to a lot of people, and he was super funny, charismatic person. So if you met him, he will probably make you laugh. When I was 19 years old, my dad was shot and killed in an attempted robbery, like probably 2 minutes away from our house. He was robbed by two 17, 18-year-olds. They had just lost a dice game, and they decided, they were going to rob the first person that they saw. And the first person that they saw just happened to be my father. After he was killed, I had to switch schools and move back to St. Louis. I just finished my freshman year at Hampton University in Virginia. But after his death, I moved back home to St. Louis. My older brother, he was a student at the Art Institute of Santa Monica in California, and he had to move back to St. Louis, and we both became roommates, and we attended Webster University. After this happened, I grappled with the question, why? Why did this happen? Also, what needs to change so this doesn't happen again? As we saw in the first couple slides, I define myself as empathetic, resilient, creative, and reflective. And those identity markers led me to ask, why? Why did this happen? Why did a 17, 18-year-old make a decision to take someone's life? And what needs to change so it won't happen again? This was the first moment of how my personal identity and experiences led me to want to create interpersonal change, but I didn't know what to do. I was grieving. I've never lost a close family member like that before, and I really just didn't know. I felt really lost. So I knew the first thing that needed to change was my response to grief. Like I said, this was really hard, difficult time in my life. I was still really dependent on my father, so my life was uprooted. I had to move away from my childhood home, or move out of my childhood home. Me and my brothers were trying to figure out where we were going to live, where we were going to go to school, how we were going to support ourselves. So I decided I needed to use who I am to do what I could. And I knew the thing that I could do to help myself, because I was struggling and needed help, was that I could write. So I wrote this piece on Medium. It's called Losing Your Dad When You're a Daddy's Girl. This is one of the first things that I wrote when I started blogging. I wasn't on social media at the time that I wrote this. I just wrote it and I sent it to my family hey, I wrote this for, just because. What I didn't know was that within the week, this article had went viral, and it ended up getting published on this publisher on Medium. And so that was an example of using something that I had to try to help myself, try to create change within myself. I also asked myself, why did this happen? How could two teenagers make the decision to take someone's life? So this led me to become an educator. I was originally an electrical engineering major when I was in college. And when I transferred to Webster, in my senior year, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher. And so as it's my senior year, I'm I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to figure out how I'm going to be an educator. I was able to get into this program that allowed me to work in the school and teach in a school that I was a mentor at. So this led me to try to help other kids not make the same decision by going into the classroom. I became an elementary school teacher. My brothers This is my little brother, Tyler, to the left of me over here, and my older brother, Tyrell. They really struggled with the loss of our dad. He was a single father. He took care of us. My little brother ended up becoming incarcerated just a year after our dad's death. And he went on to be in and out of jail and prison for the next 10 years. My older brother struggled with finishing school, finishing college. He was a senior when he had to transfer schools back to St. Louis. He struggled with becoming financially stable, and he significantly battled with grief with the loss of our father. Me and my older brother were really close. When we went to school together at Webster, a lot of the people that we met there thought we were twins. They would ask us quite often, they knew we were related. They were asked, were we twins, although he was 3.5 years older than me. We were in high school together. So when I was a freshman, he was a senior. We were roommates our first year at Webster. We partied together a lot. We cooked together. And he was an artist himself. He went by the name Rail Finesse. He was a visual artist. He liked to paint and draw, and that was a passion that he had since he was a child. My dad would let him paint murals in our basement. One of the first murals that he painted in our basement was this big picture of Dragon Ball Z characters. And, it's kind of strange for a parent to let their children paint on the walls, but that was the type of father we had. And then he just poured into my brother's artistic passions. Just 6 years after our father was killed, my brother lost his life in the same way. He was shot and killed in an attempted robbery in the Central West End in St. Louis. And this just happened just 4 days after the 6th anniversary of our dad's death. Once again, I turned to why did this happen and what needs to change? I struggled a lot. I really couldn't wrap my head around losing 2 people the same way, 2 people that I was really close to the same way. So that was the second moment of how my personal identity and experiences led me to want to create interpersonal change, but I didn't really know what to do. So the first thing I did was turn to music. It started off as a way to just get through grief, honestly. Every day after work, at this time, I believe I worked at the Boys and Girls Club in St. Louis. Every day after work, I would put on some beats and I would just write all day, just write songs, make songs. And I started that in 2016. By 2018 is when I realized that I was actually pretty good at songwriting. Music was just a way to help me grieve. And I started writing just to get through the day. I wrote a song called Last Words, and this came from some homework that my therapist gave me, where they said, if you could say some last words to your brother or to your dad, what would you say? So I flipped it and I wrote a song called Last Words with my brother saying some last words to me from his perspective. This became my most streamed song, most well-known song, and the song that I use when I perform. It's my intro. I still had that lingering question though. Like, I turned my pain into passion, but I was trying to figure out, what can I do? Why does things like this happen, especially in my hometown? I want to feel safe where I live. We all just want to feel safe where we are. And this led me to work at the Freedom Community Center. So currently I do restorative justice work with people accused of doing serious harm to another person. So at FCC, we do restorative justice. We work with people that have been harmed and people that are accused of being harmed, and we form an accountability process outside of the Justice Center. So I took those identity markers, again, that identity of empathetic, resilient, creative, and reflective, and put that into a purpose of changing what I felt like was systemic change that needed to happen. Any questions so far before I move on? You can put them in the chat. No problem.
No questions yet, just a lot of kudos and thank you for sharing. Oh, here we go. Yeah, just wondering, loving your full circle moment.
Thank you. So, artistic activism is not without its risks. I know I kind of talked about my life pretty fast and the things that I experienced, but it was not easy. It was not easy, being vulnerable. It was not easy following a passion. It was not easy trying to figure out how to get up and do this every day. So I want to ask a question to you all. What are the risks and challenges that you can see from artistic activism? And you could drop those in the chat. What are the risks and challenges in doing work like this? I see being targeted. Yeah.
Vulnerability, yes.
Vulnerability. Fear. Yeah. It's scary, right? It's scary putting yourself out there. It's scary, like, just letting folks into your life, letting them know who you are, what you've been through. I see possibly being misunderstood, anxiety.
Yeah. Reopening wounds, yes.
Yeah, reopening wounds. Yeah. Social, societal consequences. Open itself up to feeling hard emotions. Yes. I can't express that enough. It's very hard digging deep and facing the things that we kind of don't want to see, that we don't want to face. What else do we have? Not having a support system. Yeah, it can feel very isolating too. Rejection, being afraid that some folks might not like what you say or not care about what you say. Being visible during your healing journey. Absolutely. One of the things that I wish I could have changed was when I went through this trauma and this grief, was that everybody knew about it. It was all on the news. I couldn't run away from it, So it's like I was visibly trying to heal, and also everybody was watching me in that process, and it's ugly. The healing process is so ugly. There were moments where, I was ugly, and I had to be open and upfront about that. That I was healing, and it's not always gonna look great. I see reopening those wounds, being re-traumatized, risk of losing future opportunities because of artistic statements, long-term mental health challenges. Yes. You all really hit the nail on the head. So some challenges could be backlash and criticism. Artists engaged in activism may face criticism or backlash from people who disagree with their methods. This could range from online harassment to physical threats. I have had anonymous tweets sent to me about the work I've done in restorative justice. I've also had, folks make really negative comments about me as a woman, about me as a Black person. And that can really impact your mental and emotional well-being, where you're just faced with all these messages from people that don't really know you. They don't know you. They don't really care about you. There's also censorship. In some contexts, especially those that have like restrictive societal norms, artists may face censorship or suppression of their work. And that can limit your ability to freely express yourself and advocate for social change. Also, sometimes being an artist is very hard financially. Pursuing activism through art is not always financially viable. That could lead to challenges in sustaining yourself economically. Many artists rely on grants, crowdfunding, and part-time jobs to support their activism. And once again, if you go back to that backlash and criticism, sometimes it's hard to get grants if folks just don't agree with your message. There's also personal vulnerability. Artistic activism often involves of sharing personal stories and experiences, making artists vulnerable to scrutiny and exploitation. That exposure can sometimes take a toll on your mental health and well-being, especially if you don't have adequate support systems in place. I remember seeing in the chat someone said like lack of support systems. There's also a legal risk. Depending on the nature of your activism, you may encounter legal risks such as defamation lawsuits, copyright infringement claims, or even arrest and imprisonment. One thing that I forgot to mention, when I was a teacher in St. Louis Public, my second year teaching was also the year that Mike Brown was killed. And so, you know, being who I was, I wanted to figure out like what was it that I could do as an educator. So every day after school, I went out and I protested in Ferguson. I did that for months. And a lot of times when I went out there, I saw some of my students out there in the streets protesting. And I had friends and things like that have been arrested. A hand is raised. Oh, yeah, if you have a question or comment, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll answer it. And Sarah and Amber will let me know and we'll get to those. Also, there's burnout. Like when you're doing this work, it takes a toll on your body. Then you have the pressure to create this impactful work. And that can sometimes lead to just like breaking down, you know. Artists sometimes struggle to maintain a balance between self-care and your work. And that could risk your overall well-being process. Then there's institutional resistance. When you're challenging systemic injustices, you may face resistance from power structures. That includes governments, it includes corporations, it includes cultural institutions. That resistance can manifest in various forms, such as like funding cuts, not getting access to that grant, blacklisting, having folks that are gatekeepers say that they're not going to allow you to perform on their stage and they're not going to invite you into their space, or exclusion from mainstream platforms. So it has a lot of risks, but what are the rewards? My biggest thing is that artistic activism can create change. Using your identity, using your experiences, and using your story, and channeling that into a way to create change in the community is transformative. So I want you to drop in the chat, what do you believe are the rewards of artistic activism, of using your story and your identity to create change? What are the rewards for that? I see connection, therapeutic exercise. Sorry, the chat started moving really fast. Compelling others to get motivated. Absolutely. Yes. Sometimes it just takes one person to stand up and say something for other people to stand up and do something. Motivation to others to keep it going and keep going. Yeah. Self-fulfillment. Being the change you want to see. Being the representation that's needed. Steps towards healing. Helping to implement visible social change. freedom, living a life aligned with your values and the change you want to see. Absolutely. So your journey to artistic activism does not have to look like mine. Everybody has a different story, right? Everybody is unique. And sometimes you don't even have to use your vulnerabilities or like the things that have happened in your life you don't have to use those things as your motivation. I want us to take a look at some folks from St. Louis, that are also doing change in our city. So first we have TEFPO with Hands Up United. Hands Up United is a social justice activist organization based in Ferguson, Missouri. It was formed after the shooting of Michael Brown. So the organization seeks justice in the Michael Brown case and prevention of future incidents nationwide. TEFPO uses his art to channel and create change. I've seen Tef out protesting. I've also seen him on stage, and he's using both of those things in his work. We also have Sir Eddie C. with the Little Black Boy campaign. The Little Black Boy campaign was a campaign that he did to raise over $16,000 for Black men in St. Louis to receive free therapy. So Eddie took his story and he took his passion to create opportunities for folks, particularly for Black men to receive therapy. Then you have Brock Seals. Seals creates art to provoke art and start conversations. He uses his work to be a catalyst for his people. He believes his work can inspire others to defy the odds and chase their dreams. Brock does a lot of events around St. Louis, but he also describes himself as an art activist. So all in all, like my journey went from me writing songs in my house, writing songs in my living room, to being on stages such as this one. What started as a way for me to just grieve became a way for me to share my story and express that story with others, and express a way, like share with others that you don't have to stop. Like life does not have to end because of the tragedies that we've experienced, but we could channel those into some things that can help other people change or help other people heal. So this is an opportunity for you to ask me any questions that you have about my story and my art and my work.
Thank you so much, KV. While we're waiting for people to ask their questions in the chat, I just want to say thank you so much for your vulnerability, for you sharing your story and showing how one way that you can give back and make change in your community. So as KV said, if you have any questions for her while we're here in the chat, put them in the chat and we will go ahead and read them out and get some responses for you. And I guess while we're waiting, I do have one question for you, KB, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How were you able to find that strength to get through everything that you got through to become what you are now?
I would say it's community. I had a very strong support system of friends and family that just didn't leave me behind. They didn't let me sit in my grief. They didn't let me, jump off the deep end as I often wanted to do. And I think that's really important. I think all of us are just looking for a community. We're just looking for people that see us and understand us. And I think art is another way to get people to see you and understand you. We often, resonate with music or even paintings. And when we listen to songs, we're like, how did this person describe my life? When you're going through a breakup, you listen to those love songs. And I think all of that is just creating community with each other.
Yes, yes. So you had one question in the chat. So you spoke about your father and your older brother, and I guess curiosity on your younger brother and how they're doing, how their journey is going.
Yeah, I just saw my little brother a couple days ago. He moved to Los Angeles. He wanted to just get out of the city to just see something different. He's been living there for maybe 4 or 5 years. He came to visit. He has 3 children now, and he is doing better. He still struggles, but he's doing a lot better than he did when he was 16, 17 years old.
Thank you so much. There's a question on asking, do you share this story with formerly incarcerated folks that you work with? If so, why or why not? And how do they normally respond when they hear all the things that you've gone through?
Let's see. I'm the director of our group track program at Freedom Community Centers. So I'm not a direct mentor, but oftentimes I find myself directly mentoring folks. So I do have some mentees that I kind of taken under my wing that know a lot more about my life and what I've been through. And we've shared experiences. And one thing I've learned with the people that I work with, like someone that has caused harm has experienced a lot of harm in their life. They've experienced a lot of trauma. And so I've talked with folks about grief, particularly, and how grief or like losing a loved one sometimes was that life-changing moment that changed the trajectory of your life. And also like, okay, what can we do to like change it in a different direction, go down a different path?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. There's actually a question about, do you ever experience writer's block?
Yes, I do all the time, actually. I actually had a moment of writer's block for like a year, and it was more of just like, I don't know if it was that I couldn't think of anything to write, but I just didn't have the motivation to. It was just a lot going on, and grief and trauma that you don't acknowledge, well, it's going to come out in some way. And the way that it manifested in me was that I just had a block. I felt anxious about writing. I felt anxious about creating. I felt anxious about everything. So I had a period of time where I did not release music. I did not perform. I turned down everybody that asked me to be on a show or to, do an interview because I was afraid. And that was because I wasn't working through like the hurt. I wasn't working through the harm that I've been through.
I can totally relate. I tried to write when I was younger, and have not gone back to it. But writer's block it's a thing. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Sometimes it just lets you know that there's something you need to work on first before you can get those words out, right?
Yeah.
There is a question about what is your go-to song for times when you're feeling down or overwhelmed?
Oh, my go-to song? I love that question. So I love making playlists. I was hired as a playlist curator with AudioMac for their Hometown Heroes St. Louis playlist in like 2020. And that came out of me just like making playlists for everything. So I have a playlist called Ty's favorite songs, and it's my dad's favorite songs. And I think like my go-to is like listening to that playlist, but some of the songs on that playlist are Ain't No Mountain High. What's the song by LTD? It's a bunch of songs that he used to sing all the time. A lot of Donny Hathaway. Yeah, Donny Hathaway actually makes me really sad, but his voice is just so soulful, and like the content of like his lyrics are very sad too. But those are my go-to songs. Anything that reminds me of my family. My older brother likes Future, so I don't really like Future like that. But if I want to remind myself of my brother, I'll listen to Future.
Yes, I agree with you. Not one of my favorites, but I get the people that like Future, right? So there's basically saying thank you for everything that you've said today, and they're wondering how can we as a community of folks be supportive and get involved with the work that you're doing?
Sure. there are always ways to get involved. So one thing I like to say is that everybody has a role. All of us have a role. All of us have a lane. And you just got to figure out what that is and then stick to that. Like, you don't have to worry about anybody else's role, anybody else's lane. Like, if you are the person that is passing out water and sandwiches at the protest, then you are the person that's passing out water and sandwiches at the protest. And you do that to the best of your ability, because you also need people that can do that, right? You also need artists that can share the story and tell the future generations about what happened today, right? We're still listening to music from the 60s and 70s that were talking about the civil rights era. We need artists. We also need people that are on the front lines. You need people that are going to be the agitators and that are going to, go run up in the city justice center and say, hey, this is wrong, this is not right, or run up in the courtroom and try to create change. You also need educators, and you need scholars. You need people that are doing research and that can articulate like data and historical facts to people. And you need people that are just like funny. You need comedians. You need people that make entertainers. You need people that make people feel good. So what I say, what you can do is figure out what it is. Like, look at your story, look at your identity, and say, this is something that I'm super passionate about and I'm really good at, and I'm going to do this to create change. If you want to do something very specific, at FCC, we are always looking for volunteers for our Court Watch program. The Court Watch program is a group of volunteers that go into court at the Carnahan courthouse downtown, and they just watch the judges. In St. Louis, we vote to retain our judges, but oftentimes it's just like, do you want to retain the judge? Yes or no? And people don't really know about the judges, right? So the court watchers, they go in and they see how much time judges spend on each case. They look at any remarks that judges may make about people that come through their courtroom, if folks are given an opportunity to talk to their attorney or not. And then we create a report where during election season, we can share with folks, this is the report card for each of these judges in our circuit.
That is wonderful work. Because I know whenever I see that question, I'm like, I don't know anything about these judges. So I'm glad that there's a resource for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Considering everything you've gone through in St. Louis, with all the violence that sometimes happens in St. Louis, what are your views of the city now?
I love this city. This city is so beautiful. And I think, like, since I've been working with folks that are accused of doing, some of the things that we see on the news, and learning about people's stories and learning about people, you kind of realize that there are some deep systemic issues that are causing a lot of the harm and violence and trauma that we see. And these systemic issues are historical. And because they have never been intervened on, because we have never changed them, we're going to continue to see the trauma and violence and harm. And so it's people like the folks that I showed previously. It's people like those of you on this webinar that are instrumental in creating change, because we are the only ones that are going to be able to keep us safe, like our community. And so, like, I love St. Louis. I see the beauty here. I also acknowledge and recognize that there is some historical violence and trauma and systemic issues that have caused a lot of the violence we see in the city. But I do believe that it can be changed.
Totally hear you. As an East St. Louis native, I feel you. It can be hurtful seeing the things that happen in our city, but at the end of the day, this is our city. We love it. We want to see it prosper. We want to see good things come out of it and see good things happening in the city, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of good things happening in the city, where can we stream your music?
I am found on everything. So you can go to Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, Tidal, SoundCloud, Audio Mac. My name is stylized as KVtheWriter with no spaces. So KVtheWriter is one word. And you can find me there.
Thank you so much, KV the writer. I'm gonna do one more call for questions. Are there any other questions that we want that you want KV to answer before the end of our time together? Just so you know, KV, if you haven't had a chance to look at the chat, just a lot of love and expression of you and your story and you being here and all the things that you're doing.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. It looks like we just have thanks. I think we're done with our question. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Sims to close us out. Thank you so much, KV.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Amber, so much. I just want to invite everyone to check out and hopefully sign up for the last of our 2024 Black History Month series. It's going to be next week, February 27th, with MK Stallings. And so we really hope to see you there. That QR code on the screen will take you to our open classroom page. You can sign up for upcoming open classrooms, or you can also view past programs that have been recorded. And we will post this one probably mid-morning tomorrow. So this one will be available on that site as well. Thanks everybody for joining today, and we will see you next time.